And then you had a surgery that gave you back some vision.
An experimental surgery.
Were you afraid to do something experimental? And then let's hear about the first moment you realized it worked. That had to be a interesting moment.
Oh my gosh. I was scared because this was one of those all or nothing. It was either I was going to have vision when I got unbandaged because we didn't know. I hadn't seen anything in years and years out of one eye. So we didn't know what I was going to see. So I was nervous if I was going to see anything at all. And the whole thing was, he said, well, we're going to bandage you. And I said, yeah. And when will I find out if I can see? And he goes, 8 hours after the surgery. And I asked him, well, is it like in the movies where they show like the person looks and then they blink and it's fuzzy and it comes to you? He goes, no. The way it's going to happen is at that moment, whatever you see is what you're going to see. Our goal is for you to get 20/20 with this lens, or he said, you could have the bandage removed and see nothing. So we won't know for 8 hours. We know that your eye responds, even though it has all this damage, the one eye does respond. Mm-hmm. So we said, let's try. And I did. And my goodness, 8 hours, unbandaged. The first thing I saw was an old bureau that I brought to Florida with me. I hadn't seen in years, and there it was. And I looked around at our house. Our home had been damaged by a hurricane.
Yeah.
So my husband had it rebuilt, but it was very different than the one I remembered when I had my vision. And I remember going out in the hall of this house, and I couldn't believe. I saw color. I saw furniture. I saw pictures. I saw trees. I couldn't believe it. It was there. And it hadn't been there forever. And I remember I asked my husband, I said to him, where are we? He says, the house. And I said to him, whose house? And he said, our house. And I said, I live in this house? He said, yeah, you do. And I just looked around. And when he had described after the rebuild, after the hurricane, what the house looked like, it was like nothing I had imagined.
Okay.
It was even better than I ever thought. The other thing that's funny is the first time I saw television, I freaked out because I had never seen, you got the smart TV. I mean, I guess they show you so close that you can even see pores or whatever.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen that when I lost my vision. So the first time they turned on TV, I jumped back. I said, are those mannequins, talking mannequins? And my husband said, no, those are people. I said, they don't look real because I hadn't seen color. I hadn't seen people in so long. The people on the TV did not look real to me. It really was very amazing to me.
Yeah.
But I was very appreciative. I just couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I cried. It was very overwhelming. Like the last time I remember I saw this tree in front of our house, and it was not even like a foot tall. Then I got my vision back, and the tree is like 5-10 feet tall. And I'm like, what tree is that? He goes, the tree that we planted. And I said, oh. Now, what is interesting is that I didn't look at what I look like. People ask me, oh, weren't you curious after all these years what you look like? No, I was so happy to be able to see anything. I wasn't gonna, I knew that 12 years had passed. I wasn't going to look like I looked 12 years. I remember my husband saying to me, how do I look? I said to him, He said, you notice I gained weight. Well, I hug you, so there's no mystery there. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, as far as the looking, and people would, that's the first question I'd be asked by people who knew me when I was blind. How do I look? And I say, great, because I was more appreciative of seeing for the first time after all those years what the other things were not as important to me. They were important to other people, how they looked to me after all those years, but it didn't matter to me. I finally stopped. I remember one time I was running around trying to look at different things, flowers and everything else. And I took a glance at myself and I said, oh, gee, wow, okay, that's cool. And off I went because it was amazing. 8 hours was the difference. Just 8 hours. And it wasn't like the movies. You blink and maybe you see and you don't. It's not clear. 8 hours told the story. It was clear. It was with color, just the way it was in the room.
Wow.
It amazed me. But dealing with smart devices, everybody was used to them. And, here I was, hugging soda machines because I couldn't figure out if they were where you're supposed to press or, I was trying to figure it out or maybe you had to do it faster. It was, it was interesting. I remember the first time I went with my sister and I went up north because there's plants. Plants are different up north and down here. We have orchids and whatnot down here. Up north, they at that time we went to somebody's garden and they had all these blooming flowers and plants and they had lightning bugs where you could see the light on the bug. I hadn't seen that in forever. We don't have lightning bugs here. So I'd seen these. I was amazed. I wrote a poem that I was so overwhelmed by it all. Seriously. It just was. My sister at one time grabbed me by the arm and said, you look strange, because I was like touching, like almost petting the flowers because I couldn't believe they were real.
Wow.
It was just a lot.
That's so interesting. I mean, not hardly anyone on planet Earth has got to experience that, so that's such a unique experience to you to have, sight go away and then come back, and it almost does sound surreal that, when you didn't think.
It's Rip Van Winkle,
Yeah.
the modern Rick Van Winkle. I mean, this was, and when I got my operation, they didn't think about the ramifications of not seeing and then all of a sudden seeing. They
Yeah.
thought, my doctor thought, I was just going to pick off where I left off. Just pick up.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
good. Bye. I got no counseling. I did not, what I saw and what I had to deal with. I had no idea what was coming, honestly.
Wow.
So that's what I have to say was the big, like, oh my God, I didn't even know. It was like a runaway train, you know? Somebody's saying to you, hit, touch it's a touch screen. What is a touch screen? Or like when somebody said to me, you have to swipe. And I said, what? Swipe? What does that mean? Because the only swipe I knew was when somebody stole something from you, they swiped it.
Yeah.
I said, I don't know anything about swipe. And I want to tell you, when I got my first smartphone, I had to practice swiping. I was like a child. I couldn't figure out how to even do it because I kept trying to like press a button like in the old days where you just press the button and it happens. That wasn't what it was about. So I was so behind the learning curve that it was kind of funny. It really was funny
Wow.
because everybody else knew what to do except me.
What year was this? What year was it that you had this surgery?
What was the year? 2012,
2012.
January.
Yeah. What year were you basically considered blind? Like where you're not
98, 99.
Yeah, because
98, 99 was when I couldn't see anything and I went to the lighthouse.
yeah, it's interesting because that is such a pivotal time for technology. The amount of changes between 1999 and 2012. Standard definition TVs to HD to
Yeah.
4K.
Yeah.
Everything's touchscreen. Smartphones. I could imagine all the confusion for certain tech changes and things like that.